Hey, welcome everyone. This is the Washington State Building Code Council public hearing for June 10th, 2026. I'm going to ask our Managing Director, Dustin Kerb, to begin the meeting, please.
All righty. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our June 10th State Building Code Council public hearing for building code adoption and amendment. Before we get started, I want to give everyone an overview of how the hearing will work. The State Building Code Council is holding this hearing for proposed rulemaking related to the 2024 code adoption cycle. This hearing is specific to changes to WAC 5150, the International Building Code, WAC 5151, the International Residential Code, WAC 5152, the International Mechanical Code, WAC 5154A, the International Fire Code, and WAC 5156, the Uniform Plumbing Code. WAC is shorthand for the Washington Administrative Code, which is which has the legal authority where state rules are codified. The proposed changes are posted on our rulemaking page labeled the 2024 Code Adoption Cycle of the SBCC website. The purpose of this rulemaking hearing and comment period is to provide the public with an opportunity to comment on proposed changes to the WAC language. This is your opportunity to let SBCC know your thoughts on the specific changes. You can do so by testifying or submitting written comments. As a reminder, today is an opportunity to deliver testimony. There will not be dialogue held between the council and testifiers. If you have a script or any written comments to submit, please submit them to the SBCC email at sbcc@des.wa.gov. Registrants for today have been grouped according to the code they indicated for testimony. When we get to that part of this hearing, I will call our hearing officer will call your name and then allow you to unmute. Please remember to state your name for the record. In order to ensure that everyone has a chance to make comments in a timely manner, please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. I will let you know when you have a minute remaining. Also, I will follow up and let you know when your 3 minutes have passed and to wrap up your comments. Remember, also submit your comments in writing via the email or postal code. If you have a script, please help us get the transcript right by delivering that to staff. Just as a reminder, this hearing is here for the specific purposes, is for the specific proposed rule changes. If you have other comments for issues that aren't specific to these proposed changes, please provide those to staff separately. And as we do with all meetings and hearings, this audio and video is recorded. And I'll now turn it over to our hearing officer, Todd Byerther.
Okay, thank you, Dustin. So welcome everyone. My name is Todd Byerther. I'm the chair of the Washington State Building Code Council. I will be the SBCC's designated hearing officer today and will be conducting this hearing. I now call to order this hearing regarding WAC 5150, adoption and amendment of the 2024 International Building Code, WAC 5151, adoption and amendment of the 2024 International Residential Code, WAC 5152, adoption and amendment of the 2024 International Mechanical Code, WAC 5154A, adoption and amendment of the 2024 International Fire Code, and WAC 5156, adoption and amendment of the 2024 Uniform Plumbing Code. I'd like to advise everyone that this hearing is being recorded and the audio file will become part of the official rulemaking file. For the record, this hearing is being held on June 10th, 2026, beginning at 10 a.m. in person and via Zoom with teleconference options. The purpose of this hearing is to receive public comments on adoption and amendments to WAC 5150, 2024 International Building Code, WAC 5151, 2024 International Residential Code, WAC 5152, 2024 International Mechanical Code, WAC 5154A, 2024 International Fire Code, and WAC 5156, 2024 Uniform Plumbing Code. This hearing is being conducted in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, RCW 42.30, and the Administrative Procedures Act, RCW 30.05. Legal notice of this hearing was filed with the Washington State Code Revisor on May 5th, 2026. The Washington State Register number for WAC 5150 is WSR 26-10-068. The Washington State Register number for WAC 51-51 is WSR 26-10-071. The Washington Register number for WAC 5152 is WSR 26-10-070. The Washington State Register number for WAC 5154 is WSR 26-10-069. The Washington State Register number for WAC 5156 is WSR 26-10-076. Notice of this hearing was also posted on the SBCC website at sbcc.wa.gov. The hearing is being held to consider testimony on the proposed rules. For the 2024 IBC, the council received 63 proposals. The IBC Technical Advisory Group, or TAG, recommended approval of 53 proposals as submitted or as modified. For the 2024 IRC, the council received 32 proposals. The IRC Technical Advisory Group recommended approval of 25 proposals as submitted or as modified. For the 2024 IMC, the council received 31 proposals. The MVP Technical Advisory Group recommended approval of 26 proposals as submitted or as modified. For the 2024 IFC, the council received 42 proposals. The IFC Technical Advisory Group recommended approval of 36 proposals as submitted or as modified. And for the 2024 UPC, the council received 21 proposals. The MVP Technical Advisory Group recommended approval of 13 proposals as submitted or as modified. The council recommends following these proposed rules to allow input through the public hearing process. We will now hear oral testimony regarding the proposed changes. For the record, please identify yourself and if you represent a group. Please speak clearly so we can get a good record of your testimony. In order to ensure that everyone has a chance to make comments in a timely manner, please limit your comments to 3 minutes. With that, I will defer to Dustin to begin roll call for testimony.
Alrighty, folks, as we call your name, could I get you to raise your hand? That'll pop your name up to the top of the list. First up is going to be Jesse Walton, followed by Ken Brulette. And Ken Brulette, you'll be on deck, and we'll keep somebody on deck and try to keep it that way as we run through this. So I see Ken with the hand up. Is Jesse Walton in attendance and ready to deliver testimony? I'm not seeing them online. Eric Gu, are you online? All righty. Ken Brulette, go ahead.
I'm Ken Brulette, representing the City of Seattle Fire Marshal's Office. I'd like to address WAC 51-54A-0903. The 2024 IFC has a change in exception 1 that states that, quote, batteries not required to have an automatic sprinkler system by section 1207 for energy storage systems. This was added because the current exception states, quote, batteries. The problem is, based on the provisions in 1207, batteries that are part of an energy storage system may require an automatic fire sprinkler system. And with not including this base code exception language in our Washington State Amendment will cause confusion. Therefore, please consider including the base code language of the 2024 IFC into WAC 51-54A-0903. In addition, the existing exception 2, which is a Washington State Amendment, needs to be correlated with WAC 51-50-0903. And I have included the language in my written testimony. Thank you.
All right. Next up on deck, Deepa Sivarajan. And Eric, go ahead, please.
Good morning, Chair Todd, Dustin, and members of the State Building Code Council. My name is Eric Gu with APA Technical Services, representing the association. And my comment below is in responding to the proposed revision to WAC 51-50-2303 section regarding the lumber adoption for PRD 320. So thank you for the opportunity to speak. And my comments regarding the relaxation of minimum lumber grade in longitudinal lay buildup of the cross-laminate timber, or CLT, in the state of Washington. So APA is an independent third-party agency who provides testing, inspection, and certification services to engineer wood, including OSB, plywood, glulam, CLT, wood I-joists, and a suite of structural composite lumber. Additionally, APA is also an NC accredited standard developer who maintains the CLT product standard NC APA PRD 320. Last week, APA, along with 7 North American CLT producers, respectfully submit a joint letter to Washington State Building Council to express our concerns. Our main comments are the following. First, this amendment proposed to modify lumber requirement in a consensus-based standard, NCAPA PRD 320-2019. This American National Standard Institute operating procedure mandates that due process shall be utilized throughout the standard writing process. This Washington State amendment would effectively bypass that requirement, and if adopted, they would create a state-specific condition that falls outside of the scope of the standard, leaving no third-party agency able to enforce the compliance. Second, the proposed adoption seeks to remove the lower bound machine stress rated or MSR lumber for longitudinal layers. While MSR lumber is a non-destructively graded lumber, it must also satisfy specific visual grading requirements. For low MSR grade, these visual requirements, including knots, knotholes, burrows, and decay, create voids and gaps that can compromise airtightness through the CLT thickness. Airtightness plays a critical role in fire containment, thermal resistance, and sound attenuation. Therefore, relaxing the lower bound MSR would be detrimental to the functional properties of the CLT panels. We respectfully urge disapproval of this amendment to ensure continued safety and rigorous compliance with the model code adopted consensus-based standard. We recommend direct adoption of the relevant provisions in the latest NCAPA PRD 320 version 2025. Thank you for the time today.
Thank you. All right, next up we have Deepa Sivarajan trying to get on deck, Hannah Waterstrat, and I also have Hans-Erik Blomgren on deck. Deepa, please begin.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Deepa Sivarajan. I am the local policy manager at Climate Solutions, and I'm here today to speak about 2 different pieces of the IBC, EV readiness and embodied carbon. And I did also submit some written comments earlier this week. So firstly, on EV readiness, Climate Solutions recommends changes to Table 429.2 in proposal EV charging BFRW revision 3. Again, these are in my written comments, but just to speak to them briefly, Table 429.2 regarding electric vehicle charging infrastructure, the BFRW proposal recommends that for the category of all other Group R occupancies, that the EVSE spaces stay at the current percentage of 10% of spaces, that EV-ready spaces go from currently 25% down to 10%, and that EV-capable spaces go from currently 25% up to 40%. We want to encourage further changes to this. We're fine with the 10% for EVSE spaces, but we recommend putting EV-ready spaces back up to 15%, so lower than the current 25%, but getting us a little bit more prepared for that. And then for EV-capable spaces, we recommend going up to 75%, so that the total coverage of spaces that in some way are prepared for future EV charging is 100%. We also recommend reconsidering Proposal 24 GP1123R2 as revised to reflect changes to the EV charging BFRW proposal, and I've included those changes in my written comment. The reason for these proposed changes is that Washington has a statutory climate target of reducing greenhouse gas emissions 95% from 1990 levels by 2050, and transportation is one of the biggest sources of greenhouse gas emissions. And I realize I don't have as much time as I thought, so I'll just say we really want to support a high level of EV charging options because EV adoption is very high in Washington and projected to get even higher. And by putting most of the spaces in the EV capable category, we're saving costs and responding to building owner concerns about costs and flexibility. The other comment I wanted to make on embodied carbon is simpler. I would ask that the State Building Code Council pass either of the two proposals for Appendix Q that include an embodied carbon appendix that local governments can adopt. I work closely with a lot of local governments. There's strong support for this. There's already commitments from many different local governments that they will adopt this if passed. We have a slight preference for the Anderson proposal, but either proposal would be really valuable for an optional appendix. Thank you.
Thank you. Looking for Hannah Waterstrat.
Hannah's in person.
I am in person.
Awesome.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Hannah Waterstrat, and I'm the director of the State Efficiency and Environmental Performance Office at the Washington Department of Commerce. I am directly responsible for implementing Washington's Buy Clean and Buy Fair law. I'm here today to speak in support of incorporating IBC amendments 24 GP1 118 R4 and the related one with the whole building LCA pathway in the 2024 IBC. These amendments would provide local jurisdictions with the option of adopting a code appendix that would require reporting on the embodied carbon emissions associated with projects over 50,000 or 100,000 square feet. Of the two proposed amendments, we prefer the option with 3 embodied carbon reduction pathways, as it offers local jurisdictions and builders the most flexibility to achieve embodied carbon reductions, but we would support passage of either option. Both the 2021 State Energy Strategy and Washington's Comprehensive Climate Action Plan identify a reduction of embodied carbon in the built environment as a key strategy to ensure the building sector keeps pace with economy-wide emissions reductions required in state law. By providing an optional appendix, these proposals help move the state towards implementing embodied carbon policy proposal priorities while preserving flexibility for local jurisdictions to move at a pace that fits their unique situations and challenges. This proposal also builds on the strong foundation and clear direction that Washington State has set for reducing the embodied carbon associated with building materials. The state's Buy Clean and Buy Fair policy, intended to increase demand for low embodied carbon products, spur the development of environmental product declarations, and build market awareness of global warming potential reporting methods, applies to state agency and higher education building construction, and would remain limited in scope without these building code provisions. A code-based approach has the unique ability to directly influence the design and construction practices demonstrated by commercial building projects across the state. The code amendments being considered today would be complementary to our Buy Clean and Buy Fair policy. I do not have any concerns that adoption by local jurisdictions would conflict with the work that we're doing to implement Buy Clean and Buy Fair. Thank you for your time.
All righty, next up I have Hans-Erik Blomgren, and then if we have a representative from the Washington Aggregate and Concrete Association, if you could raise your hand so I could identify you. Hans-Erik, please begin when you're ready.
Greetings. My name's Hans-Erik Blomgren. I'm a registered structural engineer in Washington State, also a member of the PRG 320 CLT Standards Committee and the American Wood Council Design Standards Committee. I've written and testifying here today about what I believe to be a oversight by the TAG Committee in 2024 by not recognizing a significant change in the 2024 IBC Section 2301.2 that affects current amendment in 2304. The error identified was corrected in the 2022 IC Code Action Hearing process, where the American Wood Council staff, David Tyree, clarified that all CLT heavy timber thicknesses in Chapter 23 have always been intended to be actual thicknesses. The error was that some thicknesses were nominal and actual, and there was not clarity there. The vote by the ICC Code Action Hearing Panel was unanimous in sort of the change that all thicknesses should be actual thicknesses. And importantly, a member of the panel had it recorded in the minutes that this would correct an error in the 2021 IBC. Fixing errors should be seen as significant change, in my opinion. I have included attachments in my letter. Also, the 2021 code cycle proposed amendments included. Rereading that and to support my points in this letter, the justification at that time was that the amended changes were not actually changing the prescriptive thicknesses of these CLT thicknesses in the model code, but clearly the 2024 IBCs corrected that, and they have indeed changed. As described above, the 2024 IBC code process found the thicknesses to be in error. Thus, carrying forward the current amendment would be to carry over an error in the 2021 IBC on procedural grounds. I don't think that's acceptable to do this. And just as important, the 2024 IBC minimum heavy timber CLT thicknesses set a minimum level of fire life safety in heavy timber buildings. Allowing less than this in the Washington State Building Code with no technical justifications, I don't think is acceptable. I include a table showing that all thicknesses will be undersized for roofs, floors, and CLT walls by 1/2 of an inch, compared to the 3, 4, and 4 inches required in the 2024 IBC. So in summary, I would ask the SBC voting members to remove entirely the current Washington State Building Code CLT thickness amendments from the 2021 Model Code when adopting the 2024 Washington Code. The 2024 IBC Model Code language should be maintained as is, as it has corrected an error in the 2021 IBC. Thank you.
Thank you. Looking for the Washington Aggregate and Concrete Association. If there's a representative online, please raise a hand. Not seeing any. Next up on deck will be Megan Lewis, and up for testimony now, Ariel Brenner.
Hi, can you hear me?
You're a little muffled. If you could maybe speak a little louder, we would get a better recording.
Is this better?
I can hear you. How about those in the room?
Okay.
It's okay?
I think we'll be able to work with it.
Yeah, I'm good.
Hello?
Are you still with us, Ariel?
Is this better? Can you hear me?
Much better.
Okay, great. Hi, my name's Ariel Brenner, representing the New Buildings Institute, the proponent behind the original embodied carbon appendix proposal, and I am testifying in support of Appendix S, options 1 and 2. In recent years, the Washington State Department of Commerce has identified the reduction of embodied carbon in the built environment as an integral strategy for achieving the state's climate goals. Washington has since made progress in this area with the passage of the Buy Clean and Buy Fair Act, which requires embodied carbon reporting in larger public projects, and Appendix S is intended to build on and complement that progress by incorporating similar provisions into the building code in a way that is voluntary but also provides some consistency across the state. Our goal throughout this process has been to put forward a standardized code framework vetted by the public to provide some consistency and certainty for the market regarding where the state is heading when it comes to regulating and reporting on embodied carbon in buildings. We have very much appreciated the input that we have received throughout this process from the SBCC and TAG members, as well as from industry code officials, architects, engineers, and embodied carbon experts. Most recently, we have worked with CLF and AIA Washington on a set of comments and proposed revisions to the 2 options for Appendix S. We are supportive of the technical updates that CLF is submitting through this public comment process, and we believe that these comments consider and address the broad range of feedback we have received from various stakeholders throughout this process. NBI supports both options for Appendix S with a slight preference for option 1, which includes the materials pathway, with the belief that providing more compliance options will allow project teams greater flexibility to pursue strategies that are suitable to the unique circumstances of their projects. However, should broad support come out of the public comment process for option 2, NBI is also supportive of adopting this approach. Thank you again for your consideration, and we look forward to staying involved as this moves forward. And if the council has any questions about some of the technical details of this proposal as it moves through this process, we're happy to be available to answer them. Thank you.
All right, next up on deck, Richard Williams. Up for testimony, Megan Lewis.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. Good morning. My name is Megan Lewis, and I'm the program director for the Carbon Leadership Forum and a registered architect. CLF is a Washington-based nonprofit with a mission to eliminate embodied carbon of buildings, materials, and infrastructure. I'm here to testify in support of proposed Appendix S, options 1 and 2, and also submitted written comments this week. CLF has been following and supportive of this code appendix since it was introduced. The council has carefully considered a wide variety of perspectives along the way, and we're excited to see Washington Building Code provide options for jurisdictions that want to reduce embodied carbon. Last summer, CLF published research on the overall emissions impacts of Washington's built environment. We found that over a third of the emissions from Washington's buildings, both new construction and renovations of existing building stock, will come from materials, and less than 2/3 from energy used in buildings. In other words, now is the time for Washington to begin testing voluntary options for how the code can address embodied carbon. Shifting to lower carbon materials also addresses industrial and construction processes that are major sources of air and noise pollution and health concerns, and is part of an exciting new economic frontier in material innovation with the potential to create new domestic industries, skill jobs, and export opportunities for locales that move early, all while building cleaner and healthier communities. This code is complementary to Washington's existing policies and helps build on Washington state's leadership in this movement nationally, along with other states and municipalities that have already adopted similar codes like the state of California, Vermont, Colorado, and others. Today, there are already market-ready and cost-neutral strategies. And in addition, to the voluntary nature of code appendix, each code pathway has a built-in compliance waiver if projects are unable to meet the code requirements. This allows a training wheels approach to embodied carbon in code that supports measurement and reduction strategies instead of a compliance burden. This incremental approach will allow advancements without hardships for individual projects. We see this as a great first step forward. CLF submitted technical comments that aim to clarify the code, smooth implementation, and create compliance alternatives. We welcome any questions. Thank you for your time.
All right, next up on deck, Gemma Holt, and up for testimony of Richard Williams.
Thanks, Dustin. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Richard Williams, CWA Consultants. I'm representing myself on this one. Submitted written testimony for this as well. And this is a proposed change to 24-BFRW-EV-R4. That proposal mainly adds and revises definitions throughout Section 429. This PC is proposing to make further changes to Section 429.4 for accessibility. I'll run down some of the changes in this PC, proposing to reduce the percentage of required spaces from 10% to 5%. That'd be 5% EVSE and 5% EV ready. So mainly affect larger parking lots and still not significantly. The intent is to get closer to the required number of accessible EV spaces in the IBC version. And that version, which currently requires 5% of EV charging spaces to be accessible. Proposing to change language to allow all required accessible EV spaces to count toward the total number instead of just 10%. Required accessible EV numbers won't be. So if you add more than is required, it won't count. Propose to add language that says if one accessible space is required for a lot, you only have to provide an EVSE space, not EVSE and EV ready. This was determined by State Opinion 24-25, so we're just proposing to put it in the code. Less than 10 spaces and no EV is required for B occupancies. We're clarifying that accessible EV is also not required. Our accessible EV space requirements in 429.4 are based on accessible parking, not EV spaces. So currently as written, one accessible EV space could still be required. You can read it as being required still. The big one here, proposing to remove the state EV sign from accessible parking spaces. If not removed, there's a question about whether or not this effectively reduces the number of required accessible parking spaces, particularly an issue where one or two accessible parking spaces are required and all of them have to be accessible EV. Some have argued that this is a reduction that could put us at odds with the ADA. And finally, I specify an 8-foot space with an 8-foot access aisle. This currently could be read to be an 8.8, 8.5, or 11.5 even, because 11.5 is in section 1107.2.2. We made a change to delete 1107.2.2, and Jennifer Gilwood from the City of Seattle has submitted a PC to further clarify that because it still appears in CR 102. Thank you.
Thank you. Last up, registered for the IBC, Gemma Holt.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
I sure can.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Gemma Holt, Embodied Carbon Program Manager at the King County Department of Natural Resources and Parks. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this important issue. I am testifying in favor of proposed Appendix S, both versions 1 and 2. King County is committed to supporting policies that decarbonize our built environment. The county's Strategic Climate Action Plan, or SCAP, approved by the King County Council in 2025, identifies embodied carbon as a key area of focus. Specifically, the SCAP directs King County to reduce the embodied carbon of construction materials for commercial and large multifamily buildings through building code amendments and supporting applicable state codes. The proposed embodied carbon appendix is an important step forward in addressing climate pollution from the built environment and is a critical opportunity to reduce embodied carbon emissions across Washington's growing building sector. Many jurisdictions are interested in adopting building codes that support the use of lower carbon materials, reflected by the high turnout at recent meetings of the Regional Code Collaborative. The proposed appendix presents a flexible and scalable approach to addressing embodied emissions in the building sector. As an optional appendix, it provides flexibility for local adoption while establishing a shared foundation that jurisdictions can build on over time. I would also like to note King County's preference for a streamlined approach that relies on whole building lifecycle assessment as the sole compliance pathway. A whole building LCA-based framework provides a clear and scalable method for evaluating embodied carbon at the building level, aligns with existing industry practices, and crucially for our jurisdiction, minimizes complexity for both project teams and code officials. We believe that this approach will enable more efficient implementation while still improving transparency and reducing embodied emissions over time. However, the county would consider adopting either version of the appendix if passed. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comment. We respectfully urge the council to adopt the embodied carbon appendix and establish a strong statewide framework for addressing embodied carbon in building codes.
Thank you. Before we move on to registered testimony for the IMC, I want to give a call back out for Jesse Walton, and I'm not seeing the name online, so if you're here, please raise the hand. And then once again, calling also for the Washington Aggregate and Concrete Association. If you have a representative to testify, please raise hand. All right, I'm not seeing any of those. If they do show up after we get through the registered testimony, they'll be more than welcome to deliver their testimony. Next up for testimony on the IMC, I've got Vikas Mehta, and then on deck, I've got Thomas Deary. And Vikas, I see your hand. And Thomas, I see up there as well. All right, Vikas, when you're ready.
Good morning. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Good morning, Chair and Council members. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. I'm Vikas Mehta and I'm representing the Chemours Company for this testimony. I'm here to oppose the comment 24 GP1-113 and subsequently the proposal 24 HP1-113 revision 1, which proposes to introduce IEC 60335-2-40 as an alternate compliance path in Washington's mechanical code. First, under EPA's SNAP program, flammable refrigerants are considered as acceptable only with specific use conditions. Those conditions explicitly reference particular UL standards and their additions for equipment listing. In other words, UL 2-40 functions as the federal minimum safety baseline. We request that Washington State should not go below that baseline. Any alternative standard would need to be demonstrated as at least equally safe or protective. That demonstration has not been made here. Adopting IEC 60335-2-40 risks misalignment with federal requirements and confusion about compliance. Second, UL 60335-2-40 is an ANSI accredited US national standard developed through an open consensus process with the US stakeholders. IEC standards are baseline international frameworks intended specifically to be supplemented by national committees to address country-specific conditions. UL 60335-2-40 contains those US-specific safety enhancements, allowing an IEC alternate path, bypasses the ANSI process, and sets a precedence that undermines the US standard system. Third, US codes rely on ASHRAE 15, ASHRAE 15.2, and ASHRAE 34, which are tightly integrated with the NRTL listings. IEC 60335-2-40 points to ISO 5149 and ISO 817, which use different occupancy concepts, calculations, and mitigation approaches. Code inspectors and designers here in the US are trained on ASHRAE-based prescriptive rules. Substituting an IEC would be creating enforcement confusion and break interoperability with the mechanical codes. Fourth, Washington's HFC reduction law explicitly directly adoption of UL 60335-2-40 4th edition alongside ASHRAE 15, 15.2, and ASHRAE 34 as a precondition to refrigerant transitions. This proposal contradicts that directive and the federal SNAP safety baseline. Fifth, AJs here in the US rely on NRTL listings like those from UL and ETL for consistent enforcement. A Washington-only IEC path would enforce duplicate certifications, fragment the market, and isolate from national practice while increasing training burdens and inspection risks. In closing, we would like to request that Washington should remain aligned with UL 60335-2-40, ASHRAE 15 and 15.2 and 34, and EPA SNAP. We respectfully urge the Council to reject this proposal and preserve coherent, enforceable, and nationally consistent safety framework. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up on deck, Zach Johnson, up for testimony now. Thomas Deary.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Tom Deary, Senior Director of Codes for the Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration Institute. AHRI represents more than 330 manufacturers of air conditioning, heating, and refrigeration equipment. I'm asking the Council to reject Proposal 24 GP1 113, which would add the IEC standard 6335-2-40, as well as some other changes. First, adopting an international IEC standard where an overlapping national standard already exists would create significant compliance confusion for manufacturers, AHJs, inspectors, firefighters, installers, and technicians. HVACR and water heating equipment are certified to UL 60335-2-40, which is an adaptation of that IEC standard, but has national differences specific to North America. These national differences include significant technical requirements, such as allowable charge size for refrigerants. Additionally, ASHRAE 15 and ASHRAE 15.2 are nationally recognized U.S. application standards for HVACR equipment, and both contain contradictory requirements to IEC 60335-2-40. Additionally, all new refrigerants must be approved by U.S. EPA's SNAP program before they may be used in HVACR equipment. Currently, EPA has only listed A3 refrigerants as acceptable in limited end uses, restricting their use for most residential and light commercial air conditioning and heat pump applications. Absent these foundational approvals, manufacturers cannot lawfully deploy A3 refrigerants in many HVACR subsectors. Further, SNAP requires compliance with UL 60335-2-40. Referencing the IEC standard to avoid A3 restrictions fails to consider this existing federal regulatory requirement. Building codes are unable to circumvent federal requirements by adopting contradictory standards.
1 minute.
Additionally, the Northwest Energy Efficiency Alliance, or NEA, is listed in the proposal as an alternative to nationally recognized testing laboratory testing. Several NRTLs have indicated to AHRI that they would not certify products to an IEC standard where a specific North American standard exists. This proposal seeks to circumvent those NRTLs. There is no indication that NEA's product testing includes any evaluation of product safety. The conversation to expand the use of A3 refrigerants is ongoing in the committees that develop these safety standards. It is imperative to allow sufficient time to incorporate the necessary mitigation measures to address the increased risks posed by A3 refrigerants into these codes and standards. Circumventing established safety standards and regulations puts the public at risk. AHRI asks that SBCC reject Proposal 24 GP1 113 to protect the safety of Washington residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on deck, Jay Peters. Up now, Zach Johnson.
Hello, can you hear me?
I certainly can.
All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Zach Johnson. I'm Senior Policy Lead for Hardy. We're the trade association that represents an estimated 75% of the U.S. wholesale distribution market for HVACR equipment. Today, I'm testifying against proposed amendments to the 2024 IMC, proposal log numbers 24 GP1, 112, and 113. And this is concerning the use of Group A3 and B3 refrigerants and alternate certification pathways for factory-built HVACR equipment. Our primary concerns are as follows. First, the proposals would allow equipment using highly flammable A3 refrigerants to qualify through the Northwest Energy Efficiency Alliance Qualified Products List. The NEA Qualified Products List is an energy efficiency program, not a product safety certification program. It does not provide the same safety testing, factory inspections, ongoing compliance verification, or enforcement framework associated with UL 60335-2-40 certification. This creates concerning precedent. Second, these amendments would bypass the U.S. harmonization process that aligns product certification, installation requirements, and code enforcement. UL 60335-2-40 is the U.S. adaptation of the IEC standard and includes important national differences developed specifically for American electrical systems, codes, and enforcement practices. Maintaining alignment among UL standards, ASHRAE standards, and model codes is essential to a consistent, enforceable, and nationally coordinated safety framework. Third, these proposals would expand pathways for the use of A3 refrigerants in residential occupancies before the broader regulatory and safety framework has evolved through the established national consensus process. Introducing state-specific deviations at this stage risks creating misalignment between product certification, installation requirements, occupancy safety considerations, and local enforcement practices. Finally, these proposals would force the HVACR industry to manage the consequences of a major safety and regulatory shift before the supporting infrastructure exists. Broader deployment of highly flammable A3 refrigerants will trigger fire code requirements tied to maximum allowable quantities, hazardous materials permitting, storage limitations, and additional fire protection measures. The current MAQ thresholds in the fire code will quickly be met, and as a result, businesses will be forced to reduce inventory or make significant capital investments to remain compliant. Washington should not adopt state-specific deviations that outpace nationally recognized safety standards and create uncertainty through the HVACR marketplace. Again, Hardy recommends the council reject these proposals, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Next up on deck, Clint Reese. Up for testimony, Jay Peters.
Good morning, Council and Chairman. My name is Jay Peters. I'm the President of Codes and Standards International. Prior to my current consulting practice, I served as Executive Director of Plumbing, Mechanical, and Fuel Gas at the International Code Council, and previous to that, as Senior Director of Codes and Education for IATMO. Although I'm not speaking on behalf of any organization today, I'm a voting member of ASHRAE 15 Standard Committee. I respectfully oppose proposals 24 GP1 112 and HP 113 revision 1. And my opposition isn't based on environmental concerns or resistance to innovation. I support lower GWP refrigerants and continued technological advancement, but most importantly, I support safety first. My concern is these proposals move Washington ahead of the established U.S. safety framework before sufficient experience, workforce readiness, national consensus have all been established. The North American HVACR industry is still adapting to the transition from traditional A1 refrigerants to A2L refrigerants. Contractors, technicians, inspectors, manufacturers, code officials continue to develop practical experience with A2 installation, servicing, leak mitigation, recovery, emergency response. These proposals would move beyond that transition and facilitate broader deployment of highly flammable A3 refrigerants. The individuals most exposed to refrigerant hazards aren't engineers in laboratories. They're the technicians who install, service, troubleshoot, recover, and repair these systems every day. The council is being asked to assume that the future training, future compliance, future workforce competency will all develop alongside a broader deployment of highly flammable refrigerants at the same time. I respectfully suggest that safety decisions should be based on demonstrated readiness, not anticipated readiness. I'm also concerned by the proposal to accept the CE certified equipment as an alternate pathway to the established U.S. certification framework. Washington has historically relied upon nationally recognized testing laboratories, U.S. product certification systems, and consensus-based standards that are integrated into our codes, inspections, enforcement practices, and safety requirements. Before creating an alternative certification pathway, I believe the council should require a clear demonstration of equivalency and fully understand the implications of enforcement, liability, and public safety. The safest path forward isn't necessarily the fastest path forward. The safest path is the one that has been thoroughly vetted through the established consensus process, supported by demonstrated safety data, validated through real-world experience, and backed by a workforce that has the training and practical experience necessary to safely install, service, and maintain these systems throughout their life. For these reasons, I respectfully urge the Council to reject Proposal 24 GP1 112 and 24 HP1 113 Revision 1 as currently written. Thanks for your time.
All right, next up on deck is Ruben Grijalva. Clint Reese, if you're ready.
Good morning. I'd like to thank the council for the time to speak today. My name is Clint Reese. I am with Aon Incorporated. In addition, I'm also a member of the THSC 61D working group responsible for drafting the UL 60335-2-40. My comments today are on behalf of Aon, not necessarily representative of the Canito working group. Aon Incorporated is a technology leader in engineering, manufacturing, and selling commercial HVAC equipment. We excel in offering highly efficient premium products that exceed the U.S. DOE requirements and are capable of operation in a wide range of climates, including cold climate heat pumps. Aon respectfully urges Washington State Building Code to reject Proposal 24-GP1-113. The proposal would create a Washington-specific exception that conflicts with the established North American framework governing HVAC equipment safety, certification, installation, and refrigerant use. UL 60335-2-40 is the harmonized product safety standard used in North America. This standard is an ANSI-approved consensus-based standard. While it is based on the IEC version, there are significant national deviations that have been incorporated to ensure products are safe for use in North America. These deviations are essential for compliance with NFPA 70, ASHRAE 15, 15.2, and boil and pressure vessel codes, as well as numerous component safety standards. These national deviations reflect differences in HVAC applications, power grid configurations, and overall approach to installation safety in North America. Being that this is a consensus-based standard with multiple stakeholders, these deviations are not incidental. They are intended to ensure that these products can be safely designed, certified, installed, inspected, and serviced in North America.
Yeah.
This proposal would undermine the harmonized framework by treating IEC version as interchangeable with the UL 60335-2-40 when they serve different regulatory and safety functions in markets with differing applications. UL 60335-2-40 references ASHRAE 15 for instances in which installation concerns need to be addressed. IEC references ISO 5149, which is significantly less prescriptive and allows for individual risk assessments to be performed for given installations. This is a fundamentally different approach to installation safety that is incompatible with the framework used in North America. In addition, the qualified products list are not a substitute for NRTL certification. NRTLs are required by OSHA to undergo rigorous evaluation to ensure their competency in evaluating products and performing testing in a repeatable and accurate manner. Aon respectfully urges the council to reject Proposal 24-GP1-113.
Right. All right, next up on deck is Carolyn Logue, and up on for comments now is Ruben Grijalva.
Good morning, Chair and members of the council. My name is Ruben Grijalva. I have 35 years in the fire service and was the former California State Fire Marshal during the Schwarzenegger administration. I am currently a voting member on UL 60335-2-40 and ASHRAE 15 commercial refrigeration committees, although I'm speaking for myself from the perspective of fire and life safety. I oppose the proposed alternative approval pathway contained in Proposal 24 GP1, 113, and 112 because it risks confusing energy efficiency qualification with product safety certification. Washington can and should support efficient low GWP heating and cooling equipment. but equipment using flammable refrigerants must be evaluated through recognized safety standards and certified by qualified independent testing laboratories. The current U.S. safety framework exists for a reason. Standards such as UL 2-40 and UL 2-89, ASHRAE 15, the Mechanical Code, and the Fire Code address refrigerant charge limits, leak scenarios, ignition risk, ventilation, labeling, installation, servicing, and emergency response consideration. Those are safety questions, not just efficiency questions. A product appearing on an efficiency-related list should not be treated equivalent to listing and labeling by a nationally recognized testing laboratory. That would create confusion for building officials, fire officials, installers, service technician owners, and first responders. This is especially concerning because the proposal could create a pathway for broader use of A3 refrigerants, including propane-based systems. A3 refrigerants may have environmental benefits, but they also present higher flammability concerns. Those risks must be addressed through the established safety process before products are installed in homes and buildings.
1 minute.
Local officials should not be asked to sort out product safety after the fact. Firefighters should not be asked to manage risk that should have been resolved before the equipment entered the marketplace. This proposal is not necessary to advance decarbonization or energy efficiency. Washington can provide efficient, low GWP equipment while still requiring recognized safety certification. For those reasons, I urge the Council to reject the alternative approval pathway and maintain clear, enforceable requirements for listed and labeled equipment certified through recognized safety standards. Thank you. I will submit my comments in writing before end of business today.
All right, that's all we have registered for the IMC. And then we have a few registrations for the IFC coming up. And Ken Brulette, you are on deck for all of these and up next. Or wait, I'm sorry, Carolyn Logue, I missed you.
It's okay, Dustin. Just to make sure you're ready for me. My name is Carolyn Logue. For the record, representing the Washington Air Conditioning Contractors Association. We are contractors working in residential and commercial space in HVACR, opposed to Proposal 24, GP1, 112, and 113. We firmly believe that allowing the codes to bypass U.S. product safety standards and EPA listings in favor of an international standard goes far beyond where our State Building Code Council should be going. And I'm not going to repeat what has been said before, but we agree with all the previous comments regarding the potential and the problems with that. We have heard concerns or arguments that Europe allows this, but the environment and installation conditions are very different in Europe than they are in the US, and US has a far heavier litigation environment. We also don't believe that Washington State should be out front in this. There's no reason right now that exists for us to bypass national standards and requirements and the processes involved in that. We also do not believe that it is fair to put our fire and code officials into a situation where they're going to be approving to an international standard they are not familiar with. The average contractor in Washington State is working right now on the transitions to the lower GWP refrigerants. They are working on the previous phase-ins and that have been put into place, including the move to A2L. And while not mandatory, the exceptions in these proposals for commercial and residential buildings are far too broad and could lead to designs that utilize products using these A3 refrigerants before the industry is ready. This could put both HVAC workers and the public at risk. Our state has created a pathway that the SBCC should be following. We are an established leader in phasing out higher GWP refrigerants and moving towards lower GWP, but in a way that meets safety and product concerns, including product availability. We have a refrigeration management program to address leaks and other issues surrounding refrigerants, and we passed legislation in 2025 that actually allows Department of Ecology to adopt the rules for these types of refrigerants in a way that actually would be more prudent and safer, because the environmental and safety discussions will have an opportunity to be had in the adoption of those rules, including sale, use, and disposal of the product prior to use and being allowed in the building codes. We should be following that process. The building code should be coming after that discussion. We also believe very strongly that L&I should be involved in any discussions in bringing these refrigerants in to ensure safety and training resources are sufficient out there for contractors in the state. It is after that process is over that we believe it's time for the building code to make sure that what comes out of that process is allowed to be utilized in our state, not before. It is not the time to be doing blanket exemptions and allowances. Our state is not ready. Our contractors are not ready. And there's a lot more work to be done before this should be allowed. So we respectfully ask that this be put down. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. That concludes the registered comments for the IMC. Next up is the International Fire Code. Ken Brulette, if you're ready, I've got you for the comments on Section 320.
I'm Ken Brulette with the City of Seattle Fire Marshal's Office, and I'm making a public comment on the proposed changes to WAC 5154A-0320. I am the proponent for the code change proposals to this section in the CR 102 for the Fire Code. The original proposals to the section were based on the 2027 IFC proposed changes that were going through the ICC process at that time. During the Washington State Code development process for changes to this section, I informed the TAG committees and the SBCC that I would track the proposed changes to this section in the ICC 2027 IFC code development process. My public comment addresses the updated code development for the 2027 IFC that needs to be included in the WAC 5154A-0320 for clarity and correlation. Starting with the title of this section, the purpose is for safe storage and handling of all types of batteries, not just lithium ion or lithium metal, therefore striking that language. This is from the F54-24 code change proposal for the 2027 IFC. This code change proposal that was approved at the national level included additional clarifying requirements and are shown highlighted in yellow on my written comments. In section 320.1, general, an additional exception was added from F51-24 that needs to be added into the WAC section to clarify that the intent that this section is not for small consumer type batteries awaiting use or are charging. In section 320.4.2.3, a new deletion is proposed to correct an oversight in this section. It required the automatic sprinkler system design to be based on a technical report per 320.4.2.1. However, many scenarios will have batteries with less than 30% SOC state of charge, which exempts the technical report requirement. Also in 903.3.1.1.3 in the 2024 IFC has been revised to provide additional guidance on the automatic fire sprinkler system designed for lithium-ion battery protection. This section should simply point to 903 for automatic sprinklers and 904 for alternative automatic fire extinguishing systems. In section 324.3 outdoor storage, it was revised to include the scope through 320.4.3.6 and added exceptions from F53-24 based on smaller amounts in the findings in the technical report when provided. Again, the original proposed changes in this WAC 5154A-030 were based on the ongoing code development for battery safety during the 2027 IFC code development process. My public comments clarify what was recently approved through that process and are necessary for clarity and implementation of this section.
All right, you ready for the next one, Ken?
Let me take a breath. Okay, I'm Ken Brulette, and I'm representing Seattle Fire Marshal's Office. I'd like to discuss the proposed deletion of WAC 51-54A-0323. This WAC was added into the Washington's 2021 Fire Code and was based on the 2024 IFC. Washington State has been the forefront of bringing in the latest code updates to stay current with the ongoing hazard that lithium batteries have presented. The 2027 IFC has several changes that have been approved through the process, and to stay consistent with the philosophy of bringing in the latest code updates, the current WAC could be held in reserve, and a new WAC 5154A 0322 would be created to match the 2024 model code and updated with the additional approved 2027 IFC language added. In my written testimony, I've added in the changes to the other WAC 51-54A sections to include 0105 permits, 0202 definitions, a new 0322 battery powered devices, trucks, equipment, and appliances to match the 2024 IFC, and 8,000 definitions. All of this is to match the approved 2027 IFC updates to the hazards associated with lithium batteries. Thank you.
All right. When you're ready, Ken, on the next one.
I'm Ken Burlett, representing the City of Seattle Fire Marshal's Office. I'd like to address WAC 5154A-0903. The 2024 IFC has a change in exception 1 that states that, quote, batteries not required to have an automatic sprinkler system by section 1207 for energy storage systems. This was added because the current exception states, quote, batteries. The problem is, based on the provisions in 1207, batteries that are part of an energy storage system may require an automatic fire sprinkler system, and with not including this base code language exception in our Washington State amendment will cause confusion. Therefore, please consider including the base code language of the 2024 IFC into WAC 5154A-0903. In addition, the existing exception 2, which is a Washington State amendment, needs to be correlated with WAC 5150-0903.
You're ready.
Just trying to get them to load up. It's all right. Here we go. I'm Ken Burlett, representing the Seattle Fire Marshal's Office, and I'd like to provide public testimony regarding petition 24-GP1-021 that was amending WAC 51-54A 5706. It appears that a clerical error exists in the CR 102 because in the petition, Class 1 was added because it is now included in the 2024 IFC and needs to be shown in the WAC for consistency and clarity. Please revise the section of the WAC to include Class 1 as it states in the 2024 IFC and was intended in the petition and is shown as highlighted in my written testimony. Thank you.
Last one, when you're ready.
I'm Ken Burlett, representing the City of Seattle Fire Marshal's Office, and I'd like to address WAC 51-54A 8000. Currently in the state of Washington, we are on the forefront with code development for energy storage systems, and we currently reference the 2023 edition of NFPA 855 in the 2021 Washington State Fire Code. This CR 102 includes proposals in Chapter 12 of the IFC, which includes the reference to NFPA 855. During the code development process in Washington State for this CR 102, we brought forward all of the energy storage system proposed code changes at that time, and now those code changes have been approved by the 2027 IFC. They were based on the 2026 edition of NFPA 855 that is now also published. My public comment is that SBCC needs to update the reference standard in the WAC to the 2026 edition of NFPA 855 and include all of the sections that NFPA is referenced for clarity and correlation. I have included the highlighted language in my written testimony. Thank you.
All righty. That brings us to the end of our list of registered testifiers for today. We have some folks registered for our Friday hearing. I'll go back and make a call for Jesse Walton. Are you online or in person with us today? If you're online, please use the raise hand function to identify yourself. And then also looking for a representative from the Washington Aggregate and Concrete Association. If you are online or with us in person, please raise your hand. All right, I'm not seeing any hands coming up. I do see someone registered for our Friday testimony, Robert Glass. If you are here just to observe, that's okay. But if you'd like to deliver testimony today, I'd be happy to open up the floor for you.
No, I'm just listening today. I plan to testify on Friday.
10-4. Thank you. All right. At this point, we've gone through all of our registered testimony. If there are those on the call who would like to deliver testimony, please use the raise hand function. I will call on those in the order the hands are raised. And as a reminder, please state your name and the code you plan to testify on. And if you have a proposal number or section number to help us organize this for the council, that would be great. And I'd be willing to take any comers for testimony at this point. All right, seeing no hands, we will pause the recording for the hearing and keep an eye on the guest list, and we'll be looking for raised hands to indicate that we're looking for testimony delivery. Let me update my share, and we'll pause the recording. Hello, Ken. You have some more testimony for us?
Yes, I do.
All right, let me get us over there just to log this
And
in.
it is for the IRC.
Okay. Let me get us a little timer over there going.
And I'll follow it up with written comments, but it's just something I found now.
You know what section it is?
It is R330.
Gotcha. And are you on behalf of Seattle Fire Marshals?
Yeah, and the link for the never mind. There's a revision that we're supposed to be linked, and I can't find it.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a number there. It shows like a revision, but I'll provide the written testimony. But
Okay,
I am ready.
I think we're all ready to go for you. So when you're ready.
Hi, I'm Ken Brulette with representing Seattle Fire Marshal's Office. I would like to testify, make a public comment regarding the CR 102 for the 2024 IRC, and in particular section R330. I was the original proponent for the proposed code change, and I see looks like a possibility of an editorial error in the CR102 for this document. So between R330.4 locations and R330.5 energy ratings, R330.12 commissioning was inserted. That needs to get deleted. It is already located in the proper location under 330.12. So that can get deleted. It was duplicated. The second issue was R330.7.1, a new section, feasibility or practical problems. The first sentence says where compliance with section R330.6. That needs to be renumbered to R330.7. That is all the public comments I have for R330. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. All right, run through, see if there's anybody who missed earlier. Jesse Walton, if you're here, I don't see you on the online attendees list, but if you're there, raise your hand. Or a representative for the Washington Aggregate and Concrete Association. Seeing no hands, we will pause the recording and hold for additional testimony should it come in.
It will be the IBC section 903.
And can we be following up with some written comment as well?
I don't think so on this one, and I might not on the other one.
Okay.
I'll see what I can put together in time.
No sweat.
This one should be fairly easy.
Okay, I'm ready for you.
All right. I'm Ken Brulette, representing the Seattle Fire Marshal's Office. I am testifying regarding Section 903 of the CR 102 for the Building Code and the CR 102 of the Fire Code. The CR 102 of the Building Code needs to be correlated with the CR 102 of the Fire Code for Section 903.2.9.2 bulk storage of tires. The CR 102 in the Fire Code has a new section that needs to be correlated into the WAC 5150 of the Building Code. In addition, 903.2.9.3 Group S1 distilled spiritual wine that's in the CR 102 of the Fire Code needs to be in the CR 102 of the Building Code. 903.2.11.5 commercial cooking operations. Again, there's an exception that's in the Fire Code that is not listed in the Building Code. So again, correlation needs to happen for those two sections. And then the last one is actually it's two more. 903.3.1.3 NFPA 13D sprinkler systems. That needs to get added into the CR 102 for the IBC. And then the last one is 904.14 of the IBC. There's also some exceptions that are in the IFC that need to be listed in 904.14 of the IBC. So it's a correlation issue between the two CR 102 documents. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Another call through for Jesse Walton and any representatives from the Washington Aggregate and Concrete Association. Not seeing any, we'll pause the recording again, and if there's more testimony, be happy to receive it. Need just one more minute. All right, Ken, I'm ready for you. Oh, I'm sorry, Ken, I didn't give you the permissions.
That's fine. So there's going to be two, section 907 and also section 909.
In the IBC?
Yeah, IBC.
7 and 909. Okay, gotcha.
907, and then yeah, there'll be a second one on 909. So
While
all
you're
right.
going to 907, I'll be filling it in.
Okay, that sounds good. All right. I'm Ken Brulette, representing the Seattle Fire Marshal's Office. Going to be talking about section 907 dot 11.2 in the IFC CR 102. There was an amendment made in there with regard to design review. The CR 102 scratched the effective date of July 1, 2018. While reviewing the CR 102 for the building code, that same section, which is 907.10.2 in the IBC, has different language. It needs to be correlated with the IFC CR 102. So 907.11.2 needs to be correlated with 907.10.3. It's 907.11.2 the fire code, 907.10.2 and 3 of the IBC. So there's a correlation issue there. So that's it for the 907 section.
I'm ready.
All right, I'm Ken Brulette, representing Seattle Fire Marshal's Office, going to talk about 909.12.2. I'm sorry, 909.20.5.4. Separate systems. This was in the CR 102 for the fire code. It is not in the CR 102 for the building code. It needs to be correlated, and it probably needs to be in a new section added, 909.20.6.4, to correlate with the 909.20.5.4 that's in the CR 102 of the fire code. Those are hopefully my last two for the day. We'll see.
All righty. Thank you, Ken.
All right, bye.
All right. Ken, I didn't catch what section you were calling out for,
Yeah,
though.
1009.
In the IBC?
Yep.
Okay. Ready when you are.
I'm Ken Brulette, representing Seattle Fire Marshal's Office, talking about CR 102 for the International Building Code 51-51009. In the CR 102, it shows the deletion of 1009.8 two-way communication, and then also 1009.8.1 system requirements. Those two sections are not shown in the CR 102 for the fire code as being deleted. So there needs to be a change to the CR 102 for the IFC to include the deletion of 1009.8 two-way communication and 1009.8.1 system requirements to be in correlation between the two. In addition, in WAC 5150-1009, exception number 1 is not shown in 51-54-1009. So the exception number 1, accessible means of egress are not required to be provided in existing buildings, needs to be added into the CR 102 for the fire code. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. No, never can.
See how I got that in just before the recording started.
For
All right, it's section 1010 of the IBC.
some reason my there we go. Here we go. 1010 of IBC.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, when you're ready.
Ken Brulette, representing Seattle Fire Marshal's Office, talking about CR 102 for the IBC and also CR 102 for the IFC. So first, WAC 51-50, there's a numbering issue. It's in the CR 102, it says 51-50-10100, and that is how it's listed on this on the website, also the state website. I believe it should be 51-50-1010. I think there's an extra zero that was added in there. And with regarding to section 1010, the doors, gates, and turnstiles, if you look side by side at the two CR 102s, one for the fire code, one for the building code, the 1010 2.2.4 locks and latches should match. It's and they do not. It's the words are all the same, but the numbering is different. And it's very difficult for the user to follow if you're looking at questioning something in that section of the fire code and it doesn't correspond with the building code or vice versa. So it would be nice if we could correlate 1010.2.4 locks and latches to match on each CR 102 for the fire code and building code. Thanks.
Thank you, Ken. All right, Micah, I am ready for you.
Thanks, Dustin. I did sign up for Friday, but the more I dig on this topic, the more items I'm finding. And I'll bring something back on Friday as well for this section. It's going to be IBC section 2902, the table, the fixture table. We identified something that's out of alignment. It's going to be under I4 for adult daycare and child daycare. The table requires that a bathtub or shower be provided for the child daycare. And that's out of alignment with WAC 110-300-0220, which is the DCYF requirements for bathroom space and toilet space in childcare. There's not a requirement in that WAC for a bathtub, and that's leading to some confusion around the state on what takes precedent. Since DCYF does license these facilities, it would be precedent for them to have that requirement and not the building code. So for Friday, I'm going to present something where we're going to look at just adding a footnote or a modification there that where that one shower or bathtub facility is not required in childcare, still remain for adult daycare. But the bigger item that I want to discuss today and then probably Friday again is the table itself. There was an existing amendment that the tag decided to keep, and then there was some modification done to align it with the ICC table further. This added a bunch of requirements to multiple occupancies that were not part of the original proposed language change, including adding service sinks to multiple occupancies, adding automatic clothes washer connections per dwelling units in several occupancy types. Then it misaligns the footnotes We previously struck out the requirements or pointer to the swimming pool and spa code, which we do not adopt as a state. So we need to do some further alignment with this table and correlation. It's really mismatched compared to what our existing amendment was and was recommended to keep by the tag originally. And then there was a proposal that came in that made some modifications or some additions and changes, but then eliminated a whole lot of things and added a lot of requirements. And I'll go further into depth and possibly show an edited table for you and provide that in writing for Friday. But wanted to add that topic today. And thanks for adding me. Again, I wasn't on the list for today, but for Friday. But I think Ken and I may be the only nerds still on the meeting. So I appreciate it.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Hey, Micah, this is Todd, another nerd.
Hey,
On
Todd.
the call. So, can you? I was just going to ask if you wanted to state for the record who you're representing on that topic.
Certainly, thanks. Since most folks don't know that, Micah Chappelle. I am the Washington Association of Building Officials Technical Co-Development Chair and the Technical Co-Development Manager for Seattle Department of Construction and Inspections. So, two-part of there. The I4 item will be for SDCI and the other one will be for WABO TCD. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, sir.
Thanks, Todd. That might have been two items, so I don't know if you want to note them separately, Dustin, but it's two items, same table.
Okay, as we go out and get these ready for the council, we may be splitting them up if there's multiple sections in the testimony. So we'll wrangle her.
Thanks. I'll bring more back on Friday.
Cool. Thank you.
Don't want you to have to stop the recording.
All right, go. Let me throw in another line and then we'll get you running, Ken.
And this will be the fire code.
Okay.
1207 section.
All right, when you're ready.
Ken Burlett, representing the Seattle Fire Marshal's Office, talking about CR 102 for the fire code section in the proposal for section 1207.14, pre-existing lithium-ion technology energy storage systems. I'd like to talk about the exception. This code change proposal, again, was brought forward based on the 2027 IFC. And in F161-24, there was a modification by the committee for that exception. And I want to make sure that we add in that exception. The exception should read detached 1 and 2 family dwellings and townhouse units and are for condition 1 occupancies. So if we could change that exception from detached 1 and 2 family dwellings and townhouses to detached 1 and 2 family dwellings and townhouse units and are for condition 1 occupancies. And that will be consistent with what was happened at the national level for the 2027 code. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. It is now 5 o'clock. This hearing is being held to consider testimony on the currently filed proposals for WAC 5150, the 2024 International Building Code, WAC 5151, the 2024 International Residential Code, WAC 5152, the 2024 International Mechanical Code, WAC 5154A, the 2024 International Fire Code, and WAC 5156, the 2024 Uniform Plumbing Code. All testimony presented at this hearing, along with all written comments received today, will be part of the official hearing record for this proposal. A final decision on adopting this rule proposal will be made on August 28th, 2026. On behalf of the SBCC, thank you for participating in this hearing. This hearing stands adjourned at 5:01.